Gather round your TV set, put on your masks, and watch.
1 minute until the stream, till the stream, till the stream. 1 minute until the stream, proper horror show. 1 minute until the stream, till the stream, till the stream. 1 minute until the stream, proper horror show. Double feature horror show, horror show, horror show. Double feature horror show, soon we're starting. Double feature horror show, horror show, horror show. Double feature horror show, soon we're starting.
I don't know if you're expecting high quality stuff on this stream, but I thought I would burst that illusion from the get-go, basically. Of course, any sort of veteran horror fans, the second they heard that tune, were expecting torment and agony. Luckily, that is the only time that is featuring in this stream, whereas I think in the actual film Halloween 3, that was approximately 17% of the whole movie. I don't know. It certainly felt like that. Anyway, it's apropos of nothing. It struck me as entertaining, and I thought, let's go for it. But it has nothing to do with tonight's topics, in which we're going to be discussing whether or not we are currently in a golden age of horror, and then going into an in-depth discussion of a film picked by one of our guests tonight, the excellent Butterfly Kisses. And folks, if y'all want to just unmute and then introduce yourselves, that'd be nice. How about Po, if you want to go first, as you chose tonight's movie?
Hi, yeah, I thought the intro was really cute, by the way. And as soon as you picked on me, my husband started coughing, but he's stopped now. It's not COVID, I promise. It's just a flu. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I have a YouTube channel, but it's really not related to horror or film. But I do like films, and I'm not like a horror fan, but I've seen a fair number of horror films, and I have a lot of notes about this film. I didn't really recommend it as much as I rated it on Letterboxd, and I sent Proper Horror Show my list of what was it, horror films that were highest rated, and it was the only one that you hadn't seen. So that's the basis by which we're watching it. But on the rewatch, I was really pleased that I decided to rewatch it in preparation for this discussion, because I enjoyed it a lot, and there's a lot to say, especially for fans of horror. So I'm looking forward to talking about that, amongst other things.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the other film I remember you talking about was 12 Angry Men, but that tends to we get some angry comments when we discuss that film, so maybe we should avoid it for tonight.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
Okay, and then returning regular guests, we have Haryan.
Hello, my drillers. You probably all know me by now. Political and current event commentary YouTube channel. I don't watch many horror films, so this is more a learning experience for me. But I'm really enjoying it so far. So,
and of course, Teabag Who Laughs.
Hello, and welcome to the channel. Serial Shiller, true crime thriller, rap connoisseur.
How have I not made you record an intro?
I know, right? Yeah, no, but I've got my own channel with the Teabag Who Laughs, focus on true crime, and I also have an avid interest in horror as well. And I have to say, since we started these, I've been really enjoying them. And in particular, this stream, this conversation about the film Butterfly Kisses that we're going to have tonight, I've been absolutely looking forward to this. So, yeah.
Nifty. Okay, so the way we tend to do it. Hey, James, we've pretty much just started. So, yeah, the way we tend to do it is just go topic first and then review. So, the topic: are we in a post-2010 golden age of horror? I mean, I don't know how else to start it. I guess throwing it out there, am I talking rubbish?
I would say yes and no. Not you talking rubbish, but in terms of are we in a golden age? Because I was thinking about this earlier today, and I feel like certain decades, when it comes to things like horror movies, certain decades have certain. I'm trying to think like specific criteria. So if you look at the 90s, for example, you know, there was a lot of sort of teen slasher movies. You know, like you had your Screams, you had your I Know What You Did Last Summers, you had various films like that. The 80s were your sort of like your horror flicks, like your Nightmare on Elm Streets, your Jasons, your Hellraisers, and going back. So kind of, yeah, when I was looking at sort of the films that we have sort of like between 2010 and now, I think we're more in a era of things like supernatural kind of films, you know, things like I think like your Black Swans, It Comes at Night, those kinds of things, if that makes sense. Your Insidiouses, for example.
Yeah, I like that approach, and definitely the supernatural angle is kind of interesting. I feel like that I would take that approach too. Like I was thinking, is it just we have an absolute ton of really good horror movies? Like, is that a golden age, or is it just a lucky series of years? I think it's something more than that, and I think of it kind of in. I mean, it's kind of classic to impose a narrative that's kind of convenient, but there's definitely the 80s horror vibe that for me is a really good time. And then it gets a little messy in the 90s. There's good stuff in there, but it's, you know, some of the big franchises are basically winding down and kind of imploding. And then what I would say is like after that, say, very end of the 90s towards the very late 2000s, what we had was not really a vibe, not really a movement, but we kind of had anti-movements, or we had really disparate movements. Like in that period, early 2000s, let's say, the post-Scream panic, you've kind of got the let's go super meta. You've got torture porn / modern torture. You've got the is it Asian? Let's adapt it move. I'm sure. How many of those did we watch? Po, did you watch a lot of the J horror and K horror remakes?
I'm trying to think. I mean, apart from The Ring, I mean, The Ring was a really iconic horror film for me when I was growing up, but that's definitely not in the golden age that we're talking about now. I can't say that the torture porn is my favorite genre. I've got a list here because having a Letterboxd account, I do have lists. This one was actually made by my husband, but if you want to know exactly what I consider to be the great films of the last 10 years, then I can read out a few for you. And I think
go ahead.
Looking at them just all lined up here, not all of them fall into this, but I think there are a lot of really psychological horrors. And I don't mean that, you know, psychological horror sometimes is a highfalutin way of saying like it's smart horror. It's not, you know, a slasher. But what I mean is the really like personal, just serene. I don't know how to say it except for say psychological, but the sort of the am I going crazy kind of view of horrific things happening. But I'm just going to read out a few. Starting at 2010, we've got Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is a, you know, comedy slasher type of thing. Maybe it doesn't really count, but my favorites were You're Next, The Borderlands. That's another found footage. I don't know if you've seen that. We've got Wolf Creek 2, which I guess doesn't really count because it's the sequel from an earlier film. Oculus, The Babadook, Creep, It Follows, As Above, So Below. That's another found footage. Housebound, the Vivitch, as I like to call it, or the Witch, as it's usually called.
I was trying to prep this for the screen share, and I can't do that well, so I've kind of jumped the gun. But yeah,
that's all good. Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite horror films ever. Is the Witch, and that's not something I usually say about a recent film, just because it's a little bit embarrassing when I think there's a thing among film nerds where you have to like the classics, or you have to like things that are like over a few decades old, when it's like really established that this is a great film, then it's okay to say that it's your favorite or that it's brilliant. But for me, I think that The Witch is it's perfect horror, kind of psychological story, like family drama story. And then following on from that, you got Hereditary, Suspiria. There's Get Out, which is a really, really popular film. I thought it was good, maybe not like brilliant, but just a few of those in there, I think made this a really good decade. And I don't know what exactly would be the cause of that, except that when you have a genre that's popular, there's a kind of a runaway effect where really good filmmakers get interested in that genre and want to make films that that replicate the joy that they feel from films they've seen previously. So I don't know who these filmmakers were influenced by, or whether there's anything that connects them. But I don't know what else to say about that, except that it's probably a good introduction to Butterfly Kisses is to say that found footage is a real winner for the past, ever since the Blair Witch Project has been, in my opinion, really good found footage. And it's a very low budget way of making a horror film. That's not to say that it's cheap, but no films are cheap. But for me, it's a golden age, almost because of the found footage genre, which is probably my favorite sub-genre of horror.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that you're picking up on the sort of psychological realness, because how I'd kind of frame it is, or explain that bit, is almost like horror got over meta. And I thought a lot of the early 2000s stuff, it was sort of taking the wrong lesson from Scream. Oh, obligatory Scream mention, by the way, folks. 12 minutes in. I think that's a little later than I usually mention Scream. But it's got to be done. Drain your glasses now.
This is a drinking game.
I try and go a Scream without mentioning it, but it's not going to happen, is it, folks? That thing is pivotal. And what I think a lot of films took away from it sometimes was the wrong lesson. It wasn't the in-genre critique that showed you we've had a lot of bad horrors, but you can still do it really well. Which is, I don't know, you might disagree with it if you really like the found footage. I think they got the kind of gold rush that slasher films did, and that maybe sort of devalued the brand, and then you get something that comes along like Butterfly Kisses and revitalizes it intelligently. But a lot of films post-Scream I felt went snarky. It was kind of the wrong lesson. So an example I'd throw out for that where it got it wrong was Seed of Chucky, which I think we actually mentioned last week.
I think we did, yeah.
I haven't seen that one.
No, you aren't missing out. You're definitely not missing out at all. There are some beautiful old kind of LGBT horror references that are kind of nice, but it's not worth it. Bride of Chucky came in after Scream. It was about 2000, I think, and it was trying to do the snarky thing. It was kind of cute comedy horror, but again, it wasn't that deconstruction. These films, I think they're over that. They're over sort of doing a sort of defensive, I know I'm a crap horror film. What you gonna do? They are saying, yes, I'm a horror film and I'm good. And they take themselves seriously, which I think you kind of have to be, you've got to have that self-confidence to do.
Yeah, that's I think that's a larger trend in all TV and in films. I think there's always a kind of a pendulum effect of you get something really popular like Seinfeld and The Office, which are all really quite cynical, like quite always cruel comedy, where we can all have a really good laugh, being snarky and sarcastic and making fun of our friends, and then we get something like Parks and Recreation, like 10 years later, where everyone's just being really nice to each other and they're trying their best, and they're just it's that sincerity that I think we can also see reflected in these horror films. Just like you say, they're trying their best to be good, and they're not winking at you like saying like, oh yeah, it's just a stupid horror film. And there is it does take courage to do that, because the epitome of cringe is someone who's bad without noticing that they're bad. You know, when somebody's trying their best and they fail, it's that's when you get laughed at. So it's a defense mechanism to say, like, you know, oh yeah, but we were never really trying to be Citizen Kane, you know. But yeah, I do appreciate that.
I feel like I have a very good example of that phenomenon right here. Think of the Haryan. Is this ringing any bells?
No, unfortunately not. I've heard of Evil Dead, but I don't know much about it.
Well, Haryan, I feel so old.
It's a learning experience for me.
Okay, it's cool. It's cool. So the reason I'm putting Evil Dead 2013 up there is Evil Dead is a remake of The Evil Dead, which was coming out, I want to say 1983. Anyone, please do correct me if I'm wrong there. The tone of that was initially a kind of intense mix of comedy, but having some horror, because they were super low budget. They were super messy. I'm pretty sure some effects were done with Play-Doh. And then the sequel / blatant remake, Evil Dead 2, is leaning into the comedy a lot more. Still confidently, it's a rollicking 80s joyride. But the 2013 remake or reboot, but probably a remake, this one doesn't mess around. This opens up with an almost like extremely intense opening scene, very gory, no messing around, and it's sort of a statement of intent that is in such contrast to the original. Po, have you seen the remake?
No, I haven't seen the remake, no.
Oh, can I? How's your gore? Your gore tolerance has to be pretty good, right? I mean, I see you've seen Inside on your
I think
list.
that it did make me cringe. I don't know if I really enjoy the gore. I mean, I'm definitely cringing at it. When you're watching a horror film, it's like I don't really know if I enjoy being scared or not. I mean, I enjoy when it's well made, but yeah, Suspiria. I think I was pregnant when we watched that in the cinema, and it was so disturbing. I had to leave the cinema, the screening room. If you've seen the new Suspiria, was it 2019? You'll know the scene I'm talking about if you've seen it. It was so horrific that for the rest of the film, I was just dreading anything like that happening again, because it was so traumatic to watch it the first time. It wasn't during the scene that I left. It was like, I waited until that was over. But then every time there was like that, the build up, the jump scare build up you get in most horror films, the feeling of dread that I was about to witness anything like the scene earlier on in the film was too much for me to handle. But for that reason, I don't know if I can say that I enjoy gore or not. But tolerance wise, I'm probably not the best. Anyway, so is that a precursor to an Evil Dead discussion?
Yeah, T-Bag, did you catch Evil Dead the remake?
I did, yeah. Several. It was a few years ago. I can't really remember much of it though. I feel like the original was more memorable, namely because of said gore. Yeah, I feel. If I remember, I feel like it was sort of toned back a little bit, but that's maybe because of sort of the audience at the time. I feel like you could have, back in, was it 1981? Was the original?
Yeah,
Evil Dead film?
I got corrected. 1981. Thank you very much, Gamnese Worshipper.
So yeah, you can. I feel like in the 80s, because of the effects that you had at the time, you could go absolutely nuts, and that was a good example of a film that just went absolutely nuts with the effects that they had at the time. I was thinking about this as well when you were talking about the Ghoulden Age topic of the 2010s. Does anyone think that the way that special effects have evolved over the years may have contributed to the way some of the films, so like your supernatural kind of films, with the way that they were able to present that on the screen with the effects that we have, like CGI, for example, because obviously that wasn't really a thing back in the day. Like, does anyone think that because of the improvements to that may have given us an impression that actually these films are better on the face of it that way?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you got ahead of me there, because that's something I'd meant to mention is we've all survived the dark days of early CGI. You know, obviously a big thing in the 80s, as well as relaxed censorship, is the increasing availability of sort of latex and mechanical effects lets you do things you could never do before. And
I mean, there was that one scene in The Evil Dead that I can only describe as hentai, but
nice.
Yeah, you can't get away with that now.
No, it was. I mean, there's something like that in the 2013, but it was massively toned down for obvious reasons. Not that I would know what that stuff is at all, but
Family
there
Stream.
is Family Stream. Absolutely. Kind of a Hills Have Eyes type family, but you know, we can. It's all good. So you've got the latex and you've got the mechanical abilities to really amp up the effects and do absolutely mind-bending stuff. The Thing is the obvious example of it. But then we enter the dark days of early CGI. And I think by 2010, you've definitely come out of that. And you're once again doing quite incredible stuff. But you might not be doing it practically always, but the CGI is starting to look so amazing that it's a sort of new freedom.
I was going to say, I wonder if we've entered a kind of post CGI era where it's used almost invisibly, where you can no longer impress the audience with like a huge octopus monster and and zombies. It's like we've seen it all before. And even you know, The Walking Dead and even a TV show can get a really good CGI now. And so that might be contributing to that kind of psychological element that I was talking about before, where you get these really personal, kind of realistic stories with you know, there is CGI in them, but it's not the main draw. You know, you get the Hereditary and the and the Village, and it's like we get it. CGI, like, it's scary. You can make something. You can make a big monster. Now that we've seen all that, what's the where can we take it now? Let's go inside your own sick and twisted brain. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say actually,
CGI, you said.
almost to contradict myself, but it's also sort of, I think, as the decade closed, I think one film that sort of bucked the trend in terms of CGI was the Halloween remake, the one that John Carpenter came back for in 2018. And I remember one of the conditions of him coming back on the film was that there was no CGI to be used in that. It was all practical effects, if I remember correctly, because he really wanted to sort of capture the heart of the original 1978 version. And that sort of bucked the trend that other sort of films around that time were utilizing. And I thought he did it quite well.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings on that film, but the visuals I can't criticize. I loved how it looked. It was a beautiful film, and the sort of slow ramping up of the gore was quite nice. I appreciated that. It didn't. It sort of held off on the really nasty stuff till the end.
Yeah, I always said that the biggest gripe I had with that film is that they retconned Laurie's son out of existence.
We all mourn the loss of Josh Hartnett.
Yes.
Every film would be.
Why
better
can't they
with
just
Josh
let
Hartnett.
him live?
They have me going back to Pearl Harbor to get my fix. It's just not right. It's just not right. Haryan.
Yes.
What would you say was your fate? What would you say is been your favourite post 2010 horror film?
I mean, looking through the list, I did enjoy Shutter Island, but I don't know if that really is that psychological horror. Really, it's more a
in the
mystery
definition
film.
that I put out, I think it definitely falls into that.
Yeah, it's between that, possibly Scream. I've seen more horror films than I actually thought. I didn't mean Scream. Then what did I mean? Split. I meant Split with James McAvoy. It's the split personality guy. That's definitely horror. I enjoyed everything about that until Glass came out, really. I didn't think Glass helped, but they've been good. World War Z was terrible. I'm just looking through this list, really. I probably would say Split, because that did kind of have me, actually scared throughout it, especially because it kind of goes from just a random kidnapping of 3 teenage girls to them then being psychologically tortured. Well, 2 of them really. The third one kind of gets through it. So I kind of like that dynamic throughout it. And then obviously they don't know what this guy who's got split personalities gonna do, especially since they only really see about 3 of them. And then obviously you've got the beast at the end. So that is probably my favourite of all the ones I've seen post 2010. But as I say, I've only seen about 5. So
hey, we're working it up. We're working it up.
Yeah.
I mean, Split is one where I saw the trailer and I said something along the lines of, "Oh wow, that's a 3-minute suicide note for James McAvoy's career." I own up when I'm massively wrong. Split was wonderful. Absolutely loved it. It's something that could have gone so very wrong that you just need the confidence, and they committed to it. And I think an earlier film might have tried to sort of wink at the camera a bit more and sort of wiggle out of it.
Felt real, that film, really.
You other two, have you seen It Follows?
I haven't, no.
Well, it's just my personal opinion, but I don't think we could even have this conversation without talking about It Follows, because that's again, that's one of my favorite films, full stop, of the last decade. 2014. Okay. And the basic premise, probably better to know as little as possible, as with all films, but it's a thing, it's a kind of a monster, it's a boogan that it just follows you at a walking pace, and it won't stop. When you're sleeping, when you're whatever, it's just getting closer all the time, and it's really frightening. It's got this beautiful soundtrack that was written by Disaster Piece. If you know the Fez game, it's a video game with a kind of a chiptune, very stylized synth soundtrack, and It Follows hired the soundtrack writer to do this. So it's unlike any film soundtrack I've ever heard, because it sounds like a video game music. Like it's that kind of retro chiptune sound.
Okay.
And it's really beautiful and terrifying as well.
Nice.
I don't know if I really sold how frightening it could be, but go on.
A creepy figure that follows you. That sounds very familiar. It's almost like a film I watched recently.
Nice. Yeah,
wink, wink.
We'll get to it.
You can't see me, but I'm winking at the camera. No, not yet.
No, I think that's a really astute point. And what It Follows was 2011, was it? No,
2013.
no,
I've got here.
2013. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely solid. And anyone who's seen it, I think, came out of that cinema talking about it, what it meant. Like, that was a deeper film. It had you discussing what it was symbolizing.
Well, you've got this classic band of teenagers. It's like it's almost is a kind of parody, well, the opposite of a parody almost, of the slasher genre, because you've got these very attractive teenagers. They're all friends together. You've got this little friendship group, but they're not at all the kind of teenagers that you'd see in Scream. They're smart and they're sensitive, and they just feel very real. It makes the situation feel very real. They're not cookie cutter or They haven't got these really strong stereotypical personalities or anything. They're just these kids, and anyway, I don't know. The less you talk about the film, the better, just because I think everyone should see it. But just brilliant.
I'm
just the kind of thing that you wouldn't see coming out in another decade. I don't think in any of the decades that came before.
Yeah,
right.
I
I'm
feel
just
like
looking at some of the images now, and I'm freaking out. Ready?
Yeah, hold off on the spoilers because it is.
Yeah,
I would say my only criticism, my main criticism of it follows is that it didn't hit me the same way the first time. Sorry, the second time. I saw it in the cinema, and it was. You may have got the feeling I'm quite a horror veteran. That was one of the few films recently that has had me absolutely bricking it, and it was one of those experiences where people were jumping in their seats in the cinema. Even though it's not big on jump scares, it's mostly just endless dread. Gammon Easter Worshipper, Don't Breathe is an amazing shout. That is from Fede Alvarez as well, who directed the 2013 Evil Dead remake. Big contrast to that film, but a talented director. I'd like to sort of wing us a little bit towards another factor in why I think we've got this post 2010 Ghoulden Age, and I'm forcing this narrative hard, and it would be some of the creators that we've got now. So, Mike Flanagan. It takes me a while to screen share, so I'm not going to get up all the rest of them, but let's just list some of the Mike Flanagan films that have come out. Ouija 2 Origin of Evil, which we listed, was it last week, in the surprisingly good sequels, a sequel that had no right to be any way decent. There was Oculus, which was on Poe's list. We have, my brain is failing me, obviously Gerald's Game. You've got then The Haunting of Hill House, Doctor Sleep. Mike Flanagan is a sort of new force in horror that is doing just amazing work with these psychological films that really get you empathizing with everyone on the screen and really caring about them, and not going for sort of quick kills. It really takes you on a sort of journey with the characters. Am I the only person with a massive... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you know what? Because it sounds like you know quite a bit about. I can't remember Mike.
Mike Flanagan.
Do you know what he's Mike Flanagan? That's it. Do you know what his inspirations, like who inspired him in terms of sort of to create films the way that he does? Has he ever said like Wes Craven, for example?
I don't know actually. That is something I should look up. That is something
because a lot of the films you mentioned there, a lot of the films that you've mentioned, I personally haven't seen. But if you were to sort of compare them to other horror films in terms of directing styles, because you are I think a master of the subject, who would you compare him to?
Interesting. I think I'd struggle to compare him in sort of, because it's so much more about the feel of his films, about how much time he takes with characters, how distinct his visuals are, even though they're not super stylized. I think that's fair to say.
Okay.
I mean, Po, you've seen Oculus.
Yeah.
How would you compare Mike Flanagan to anyone?
Oh, it's a hard question. Oculus did remind me of another film, and I'm struggling to remember what it was. But it very much fits into that psychological horror theme that I was talking about before. And for those of you who don't know, it's got Amy Pond from Doctor Who in it. And this is all just me stalling for time because I can't answer the question.
I was saying I handed it off because I was just struggling. I don't think there's.
Sorry for throwing the curveball there.
Because I'm trying to think who is it who absolutely nails psychological horror, and my brain just goes, "Oh, Mike Flanagan," straight away.
Right.
Which is not massively helpful.
I think.
So could you say that he'd be almost unique in his style then, if you can't pin him down to if you can't compare him to a specific director or sort of even sort of remotely, would you say that his style is more unique in that aspect? So again, if we're talking a renaissance, a bit of a golden era, could Mike Flanagan be someone who has rejuvenated it through a new approach to horror films as opposed to sort of like the old ways?
If I was going to do it, okay. It's not that he's. It's not like he's got a really strong slant. He's not like an auteur-style Tarantino or a Whedon, who you just know it's their film. He's more like someone who takes a genre and just does it really, really well. And when you learn he's done it, you'd say, oh yeah, fair enough. So I might bring in, say, 2 points of comparison I guess I'll try are Rob Reiner. The way he directed Misery, I feel, is really quite a good comparison. Like, it gave me that feeling. They're quite played straight films, but there's a touch of humor, but it's always from the characters. And then maybe there was someone else. Later Cronenberg. I know in the non-horror stuff, but I got a history of violence. A lot of his films sort of remind me of that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think often when you hear filmmakers talk about horror films, especially horror filmmakers, I'm guessing they'll often cite the very popular films of the 80s. The horror films that were big back then. There's the classics, and they all enjoy those. But I think there's no need to restrict the the act of inspiration to one's own genre. So I think what a lot of these modern filmmakers are doing is to take horror genre and then incorporate elements from more serious dramatic films to create this new sort of blend of cinema. But if you'd let me to pivot the conversation, I think you struggle something really noteworthy in terms of trends, where we're looking at characters who we really sympathize with, who we don't want to see get hurt, because I think a lot of older films, although they the fear does come from a natural apprehension, when somebody does get killed, there's a part of you that's kind of enjoying it, the gore of it, and especially in things like Saw, where it's like, oh no, don't do that, but also a part of your brain's going like, oh yeah, get him.
Oh no, they're dying. Somebody stop it. I
know what you mean. I think these more modern films we're talking about are a bit less of that, where you're truly just afraid. You really are dreading this character getting hurt because you actually like them, and you you empathize with it. Sorry, Mr. Poe's just sending me little messages saying that The Shining is a good example of kind of like the Oculus. It's got that psychological element of going crazy. It's probably the most famous example of that, actually. The line between what is insanity and what is an actual bug and ghost thingy going on.
It's tempting, but I think obviously because Mike Flanagan directed Doctor Sleep and absolutely knocked it out the park. But I think Kubrick being Kubrick, there's a kind of emotional distance that you did not have in Doctor Sleep. Like Doctor Sleep, you cared about the characters, and I felt in Doctor Sleep, Mike Flanagan really got the feeling of reading a Stephen King novel. The way it starts with these really believable, down-to-earth details, just absolute mundanity to ground you before you go into mind-bending weird stuff.
I think all the best horror films do that, where you've got a character and you've got them going on their own little journey that would be moderately interesting to watch, even if nothing scary ever happened. Where you're setting up. I don't know why I went to Gremlins in my head, but the in Gremlins you've got a guy and he's likable and he's got a little girlfriend, and you're kind of interested in this guy's life. You're kind of leaning in. His dad's a failed inventor, and there's this family drama that's going on that kind of it just draws you in a little bit. before anything interesting even really happens.
Yeah. Well, you said something really interesting that I want to put a pin in it. You said that the horror film's starting to take these sort of elements of other genres of dramas, and that just really clicked with me because we've had other conversations, especially in the messages, like of previous films, and the question's always, is this film a horror? Is this a horror film? Is Silence of the Lambs a horror film? Is oh crikey, what did you name earlier, Haryan? Shutter Island, is that a horror film?
Yeah, Shutter Island.
And I felt like before, horror was kind of leaking. Lots of films kind of got in on the horror vibe. Like there's a... Do you remember that run of films that were detective serial killer films where the deaths were really gory? Like, what are they called? Along Came a Spider, The Bone Collector, things like that. They're all about early 2000s, and it's like, this is just a horror film where the camera arrived about 4 minutes late. You know?
There's the opposite thing also happening where, to take an example, I recently watching Star Trek, which in the UK used to be broadcast on the Horror Channel, which I guess was short on horror, so they had to beef it out with, they had to buff, they had to puff it out with things like Star Trek, which are like sometimes something a bit spooky will happen, but there are different directing styles depending on who directed the episode. You might get a few skeletons or nothing really approaching a jump scare, but you do, there are things like the X-Files where it's like, okay, this is spooky, but it's not really horror. You're watching a kind of FBI procedural detective work with something spooky going on, but it's not trying to scare you. It's just like, creepy and cool.
Jonathan Creek's a bit like that as well. They are very scary episodes. Yeah.
While we're talking about Star Trek, happy birthday, William Shatner. The man turned 90 this week.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
you're not kidding, are you? You're really 90?
No, he's 90 years old, yeah. Yeah, he turned 90 the other day.
That's
I know, right? I know. Unbelievable.
Can I put a shout out for the guy can be a bit of a meme, but he did a horror film a few years ago, 2015, A Christmas Horror Story. And he's kind of like the anchor of the film that all the different stories pivot around. And again, I'll put my hand up. I was kind of an idiot. I saw, William Shatner's in a horror film. I thought I was going in for an ironic watch. Unironically loved it. A Christmas Horror Story. Absolutely amazing. I guess it's maybe a little early. But yeah, so...
I'll say Harrods haven't even got the decorations up yet.
Oh, crikey. Okay. So, I don't know, there's quite a few strings in there that strings to the bow of the post-2010 horror era. Like, I feel this is a thing. I don't think I'm just like plucking it from the ether. I think there's some really good stuff happening and it's not random. I feel that, there's someone else in the amazing creators I wanted to list. Help me out. Who is a chap who directed The Vitch? Who was it?
I've got it here. Just a sec. Robert Eggers.
Yes.
Eggers.
Yeah, him and Ari Aster as well, of course. I mean, we breezed past Ari Aster with, of course, Hereditary and Midsommar. I know Midsommar's controversial. I've defended it sort of maybe a bit too vigorously, but I thought it was an amazing film.
Yeah, the director of The Witch was also directed The Lighthouse, which was the Willem Dafoe, Robert Pattinson. Not a horror. Not again. It's like it's not a horror film, but it's definitely not a happy film to watch. It's quite always quite alarming and very psychological in nature.
Oh, definitely. Speaking of psychological, and so we might meet the 90-minute deadline, folks. Are we good to pivot?
I'll do a
Should we
pivot.
piv-
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Film review.
Go for it.
Film
All right.
review.
Haryan,
Yes.
I feel we've blitzed the just run all over the place post 2010.
Yes. I
I would
was
love to
Googling a
hear
lot
from
there.
you. I'd love to hear from you on the film that we watched this week for our homework, and hopefully people in the chat. I hope you all managed to watch Butterfly Kisses as well. We're going full spoiler mode, so hopefully you saw it. But we're not sparing any details in this one.
Yes. Okay. So it's a free reign on Spoiler Town. All right.
Go for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yes, the film I thought was excellent. It's probably, apart from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it's probably the best one I've seen so far out of our homework. There's not really a lot to. There's not too much to criticize. There's just a lot to praise. Obviously, it's a found footage film. It just gets that out of the way. Just because it's filmed kind of. It's a documentary of a guy making a film using the found footage, which is a bit of a twist from how found footage usually goes, at least from what I know of found footage.
I was going to ask you that, Harry, because it seems like I know you're only 2 years younger than me, but I still think of you as a little sprog who has perhaps not seen as many films as someone more seasoned.
Yeah.
But I made a little list of other found footage films that are heavily referenced, sort of lampshaded in Butterfly Kisses, and I wondered how many of those references that you were able to notice and how it just passed you by.
They probably, well, apart from obviously the director of the Blair Witch Project actually being in the film,
Yeah.
I don't think I noticed any others. So it's, I mean,
Sorry, I didn't step on you. If you've got more to say, go ahead.
no, it's fine. Don't worry. No, it's a decent question because I didn't get any of those references, and I've that might enhance the experience if I got the references. It's a bit of a problem with me in general because I watch a lot of Simpsons, and that just references everything. So I'll be watching a film, I'm like, oh, that's in Simpsons.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, oh my god, what the hell is that?
Was this
Oh, what the-
referenced?
Bruh.
Oh,
Was I right? That's
Bruh.
family
Frightening,
friendly.
I got my mouse.
There's
I
no
don't know.
junk.
I don't know.
Was this-
I don't know what that is.
I'm really intrigued. I thought, apart from director of the Blair Witch, whose name I'm blanking on embarrassingly. I thought this Grave Encounters 2 was maybe one they were referencing a little bit, or at least there was a bit of the same energy there in the sense of you've got the film crew with a sort of interrogating the filming of how real it is. Am I way off on that one?
Yeah.
I haven't
Well, that
seen
was definitely. Well, I've not seen it obviously, but that was in the film. So if that's in Grave Encounters as well, where basically no one believes the guy, he thinks it's made up, which kind of makes sense to me. Even with because he first place he goes to try and get money for his project is the paranormal society. I'm quite surprised not one person believed him, but at the same time there were bits in his found footage that, like when he when the guy's doing the test with the camera in the field and Peeping Tom's just in the field in 3 different places. That's I can understand paranormal people going, you're just taking the piss. Really?
Yeah, for me that was perhaps a little low point of the film. But the closer that Peeping Tom got to the camera, the less creepy he was, I think. Like by the time he's like standing right there and going like this, I'm like, okay, that's just a guy dressed up, isn't it?
You say that, but when he did that bit and he waved,
man,
that freaked me out.
The jump scare got me, and it wasn't like So I've played a few horror games, and some horror games just get in the trope of trying to jump scare you for no reason all the time. The jump scare in this was. It's not like I was like, oh my god, and then just went, rolled my eyes because it didn't make sense. I was anticipating for the good 10 seconds while he's relieved that he doesn't have to hammer Peeping Tom.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you know that guy's dead because the reason you're watching the film is that he died. So it's like, okay, how does this guy die? You're just waiting for it.
Let's wind back a little bit. Back a little bit. Po, you said you had a list of other references. I'm really intrigued about this.
Okay, well, the biggest one I think was Marble Hornets, which isn't a movie. It's a found footage YouTube channel that was popular. I want to say like 2009, 2010 was its sort of peak popularity. The start of the Slender Man phenomenon that scared the what is this Family Channel out of me. And when
We're
I
a
was
real
there, it was
family
like,
channel. We never reference Urotsuki Doji. That's how clean we are.
well, the Marble Hornets. I'm absolutely certain that the director of this film, whoever wrote it, has seen Marble Hornets. Not least because the symbol that is drawn a lot in the film, this sort of circle with the line through it, which I think is supposed to represent a closed eye or maybe an open eye. Sorry, I'll show it again if you want to. I've got it drawn here.
Okay.
That is, it's pretty similar to the Marble Hornets operator symbol that followers of Slenderman leave around. It sounds so stupid when I describe it, but in the YouTube channel, it's so like frightening because you're just in the woods, like out in the middle of nowhere, and they find like a little brick wall or a bit of a tree or something, and it's got this symbol on, which is it looks like a circle, but it's got a cross instead of just a single line. So that was very Marble Hornet, but that was, I think, more just a lampshade for the fact that the whole setup is very Marble Hornetsy, where in Marble Hornets you have this motif where they are filming it's like a drama. The found footage is this guy who's making a film student project. He's just filming his friends, like reading the lines for this like sappy teenage romance drama that he's written, and in the background, Slenderman is showing up. And so this guy like starts obsessively reviewing his footage and like finding the Slendermans in the background, and he starts filming himself obsessively, like while he's sleeping or when he's just having conversations. And so you get a lot of these videos that are just this guy talking to his friends, and his friends are like, why are you filming this? Like, this is really creepy. And there's like a Slenderman in the background, and you watch it for like 4 hours, like in 10-minute intervals where these videos are being released. And you, the viewer, are responsible for looking out for Slenderman. And when you see him, it's like he shipwrecks. Sorry, I didn't mean to say Family Channel.
There you go. No, actually, on the symbol...
Anyway, that's Marble Hornets.
Okay. On the symbol, I had thoughts about that, and I don't know if I'm right on this, but we have had the director, Eric Christopher Myers, actually tweet out the stream, which is only a tiny bit unnerving, but luckily, I think we all loved it, so that could have been awkward. He can maybe verify this, but my understanding of the symbol was it's a reference to... Actually, Po, can you hold the symbol up to the camera again just so people can see it? Thank you. My understanding of it was sort of referencing the original sighting that, they're seeing at the end of the tunnel, which is the circle. Yeah. There's a figure standing on it. But the fact that the line is crossing the circle is because it's coming closer. That silhouette is coming out of the tunnel. Right. That's how I understood the symbol.
Sorry, I'm going all blurry. Just a
second. No, I'd agree. I thought it was something to do with the tunnel. It's also what I like about this film. There's a lot to interpret.
Just to continue with the references, that's why it's the lamp shading is so heavy, which I think does help to. It's not hack. I'm not accusing this director of being a hack. He's referencing these works in a very loving way, in a way that someone who loves found footage like me, it just makes me happy to see it. It's not like, oh, this guy just copied Marble Hornets. It's like he's taking those ideas and making them something new. And the fact that the film is about a film of found footage nerd who's making a found footage film is very much also playing with that idea. I think the Blair Witch Project was obviously the most heavily referenced. Apart from that, just in the fact that you've got this girl, it starts off with Sophia as the name of the girl in this, where she's going around, she's interviewing the locals, talking to them about this spooky phenomenon going on, and sort of intercutting with her own little research, and that it's exactly how the Blair Witch Project starts. Is this this young girl? She's a filmmaker. She's a little bit obnoxious. She's like she's quite picky and like bossy a little bit, like getting this film made. Not in a really unlikable way, but she's got a personality anyway. And it for anyone who's watched the Blair Witch Project, I think it does remind us of the main character from that.
Yeah,
it was definitely the deconstruction of it was really strong as well. Like when you reference that stood out to me, because when we started watching, the main character who discovers the footage and gets a film made about his discovery of the footage, Gavin, he kind of stood out to me. I thought it was a little weird. It looked a little artificial. He's there kind of just a bit too neat. The clothes are a bit too fresh. It's a bit too clean. And I thought, what's up with that? And then it's like, the found footage looks a little bit more authentic when you compare it to him. And then that's all part of making him seem a bit more artificial, making you question his sincerity. I thought that was a lovely subtle detail.
Yeah, because you could tell from his character, obviously, he seemed quite passionate about the found footage, but you knew that he had an ulterior motive in trying to break into the film industry, because that's what he was doing, and obviously that wasn't working out for him. And I think he was using the footage as a way of getting his foot in the door. That's how I interpreted it. And you could just tell as the film went on and more people weren't buying it, that frustration was building, because when obviously first impressions, I was like, oh, this seems like a really happy-go-lucky guy, nice, nice, smartly dressed and all that. And then by the end of it, you're just thinking, dude, man, you need to stop, because it's ruining you. And yeah. But I was going to say, actually, I'm just looking at the IMDb for Butterfly Kisses,
sure.
and I was thinking about the Peeping Tom. Did anybody get Rorschach vibes from him?
From Watchmen.
In terms of appearance, from the Watchmen, yeah.
I know what you mean.
Because I don't know if
I found him a bit.
Because I felt it.
The point.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I felt like he looked a lot like there was a lot of Rorschach in terms of the face, because like you said, it was quite indistinct. It looked, it looked like one of those ink pictures where you look at it and go, oh, butterfly. It looked like his sort of appearance looked like that. And that sort of struck me. I didn't know if that was a reference to anything at all.
I mean, I'm not a Watchmen fan, but I was thinking a bit more Slenderman, as a lot of people probably do. Yeah.
A Rorschach reference would make a heck of a lot of sense, as this is a deconstruction, and so much of it is about you're looking at this footage and you kind of see what you want to see. It's playing with that so much. Like, is this stuff genuine? I mean, that would fit really well. We're maybe reaching massively, but I encourage reaching on this stream. Again, I did make a video about how Nightmare on Elm Street was about the Vietnam War, so reach away.
I've got more to say about Gavin, who the actor who played Gavin was also tweeting in that same thread that the director said hello to us, which I really liked. I nicknamed that character Will Wheaton because of his beard and because of his personality. And
I saw that before.
Before you watched it. Anyway, I was going to say.
I saw that before I watched it, and then I've done it again.
We're on delay.
No, all I was going to say was that I saw that that you mentioned that he looked like Will Wheaton, and as I was watching that film, that's all I could think of. That's all I could see.
Yeah,
he's got that very, it's like almost smugness about him that I think is supposed to be a little bit grating. And on the rewatch of this film, I very much enjoyed not liking that character. When I know what's going to happen to him later, I'm kind of enjoying how much I hate him. And I had a look at the Amazon reviews for this film, and they're not very kind. I got to say, if you like this film, go to Amazon and give it a good review, because, my God, the reviewers were not kind. And I think it's because they were just like a bunch of 12-year-olds who've never seen a horror film before, and they're like, this guy's unlikable. They just don't get it at all.
Sorry,
Yeah,
you said to me that this is a horror fan's horror film, and I think that is a really good description of it. I'd say it's still accessible, but this really rewards people who like their horror and maybe pick up on the like the beats that are being set up and are then being skipped, and know what tropes are being played with. Haryan, you were about to say something. I'm sorry I cut you off there.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, I think they nailed Gavin with the kind of film student, film prost grad vibe. As I say, exceptionally clean, which I thought was kind of what they all look like. Not all, obviously. And then, he is just very unlikable, just trying to get his project done, which came across as well in the found footage with Sophia and can't remember the guy's name.
Farley, what was he called? He had like a surname name.
Yeah, began with F anyway.
Feldman.
Yeah, they came across as grating as well. Especially with their teacher in that scene, where she's like, "Look, I really don't want to be recorded," but they're doing it anyway. Which I found it all enjoyable, and as I say, everything was set off and I'd say paid off quite well as well. So obviously you had all the interviews with the town folk at the beginning, and they were all saying, Peeping Tom kills people, and they all felt really real as well. Everyone in this film felt real. I didn't feel like I was watching actors, which can get sometimes in horror films, I feel.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So, and then, I mean, the whole time you're thinking, right, Peeping Tom obviously kills people, and obviously no one believes it. The film students don't believe it until it's too late, basically. But I was just thinking the whole time, why aren't they like just hiding the cameras or anything? But then even that's addressed. It's like basically Peeping Tom sets it up and puts it on record, waiting for you. And that's another level of kind of creepiness to it. It's like you're not safe even though the camera's off.
I thought that was a really unsettling moment, is when you kind of think they're safe because Peeping Tom's just in the camera, and then that moment where Sophia just like takes a very steep downhill trajectory after Feldman dies, and she's looking at the camera without blinking. She says she had a dream where she was at the tunnel, and basically somehow Peeping Tom got into her head and made her sleepwalk to this tunnel and look at it for an hour, and she thought she was dreaming. And I thought that was just really creepy, and not a cheap jump scare or anything, just like well done, well delivered lines. Like Haryan said, it was believable.
Yeah, she lives 10 miles away as well. That's how much influence Peeping Tom had on her, I guess. But even so, she still had to look at the tunnel for an hour. Really really good stuff. And then there's even enough mystery at the end. Things like, well, what's going to happen to Gavin's footage? How did he even track down that she was in a mental asylum? Which is fine, because that's obviously how he got all the that's how he got a notebook and things like that. I
wondered that too. I'm not sure if I missed a thing, but I don't think that was actually explained. It seemed like and you would, because I'm trying to avoid discussion of the final bit for the moment, because I think that's actually really important, the way it was done. But that was clearly shot from a different angle, so I don't know why that would be on her camera. But do you mean the bit at the end where it's in her room at the where she's in the asylum? But
I think that bit was just, that's for the audience rather than anyone else seeing it.
Acceptable.
Can we just rewind on something a bit, because you mentioned about the dream that Sophia had where she stared at the tunnel for an hour. Was that actually a dream, or did that actually happen?
I interpreted that as being that actually happened, and she was possessed to walk to sleepwalk to the tunnel.
Because there was one issue that I had, and it was how Peeping Tom was able to essentially get Sophia, because the film early on, when Feldman sets the camera up, it's made clear that it's his camera. They mention it a few times. It's my camera he's in. It's my camera. and the law is that person would be the one who stares at the tunnel for the hour. Now, obviously, they use the camera as almost like an external representation of Feldman's eye. And Sophia at no point actually participated in, she didn't use her own cameras to stare at the tunnel, that task. So my mind would sort of err on the side of, well, if she didn't actually participate in the ritual, then she shouldn't have been affected by what happened to Peeper Tom. It should have just been Feldman who got affected by it. So I never really got that connection. Oh, hello, Eric. Yeah. Christopher Myers is in the chat. Hello there. Maybe he could answer that. But yeah, but that wasn't so much a gripe. It was just me
working it out.
How that trying to work that connection out, because if she didn't take part in the ritual, unless she did, but even then, how was Peeper Tom able to influence her if she wasn't actively involved in the ritual herself? Like she wasn't staring down the tunnel. She didn't succeed in that ritual. She didn't use her own camera.
I have a theory that could be confirmed right now, or written off as absolute idiocy. Let's see how this goes. I think she effectively, how can we say, contracted with Peeping Tom. She met the criteria of staring through obsessively watching the footage.
But then Gavin,
I think
as well, obsessively watched the footage as well, and he wasn't affected until he actually took part in the ritual and used his own camera.
But he was still influenced.
And I thought about this, and
okay.
Yeah, this the thing. To be affected by Peeping Tom, that's he, gets closer every time you blink or every time the cameras turn on and off. That never happened with her. That only happened with her after she sleptwalked there. And it's not necessarily Peeping Tom influencing her either. She might have just had a psychotic episode because of, guilt of a friend dying because of her. I mean, that's just a theory. I have no idea what it actually was, but it's, as I say, it's not necessarily Peeping Tom doing that to her. So that's another thing.
It's just, I don't think, because it was explicitly explained, because Feldman says just before he dies, he's coming for me, and then he's going to come for you next. So that already implies that he's got his sights, pun intended, set on her next. But how could he get that if she didn't participate in the ritual? But then, there could be another reason for that. Oh, quite correct. They cheated and used the camera as a surrogate eye. Yeah, and again, they mention explicitly a couple of times. Feldman is like, "That's my camera." I would interpret that as, "That's my eyes that have stared down that tunnel. Therefore, I'm going to be the one who gets it, but you're going to get off scot-free because you didn't stare down it. You didn't use your camera."
Yeah, my interpretation is that at some point the Peeping Tom jumped from the camera to Feldman in a kind of a spiritual way, and that could be considered a little bit of a plot hole almost. I mean, I think it's interesting that the ritual is so difficult to do. To keep your eyes open for an hour, that, like they said at the start of the film, it's pretty much impossible. And so even to do the ritual, I think, requires Peeping Tom's influence before you've even done the ritual. So it's we've set up these rules where he can't get you unless you this and this and this, and yet I think he is a bit more powerful than that, where he's able to influence you. The Slenderman does the same thing in Marble Hornets, where he's a supernatural being. In a way, he only exists inside your psychology. So I think maybe we're being a bit too literal with the rules, but yeah.
Overall, I think the theme there is even if we could talk about like the specific rules, I think the theme there is solid. Like Butterfly Kisses isn't really a specific ghost. I think it's not a rando in a mask. Although those have their really interesting sort of symbolisms behind it. Like I think this is pure Nietzsche. This is gaze into the abyss and the abyss gazes into you. Like this is a warning about obsession.
Yeah,
I would, and as part of that, I think, again, Eric, tell me if I'm wrong here, But I thought as part of the deconstruction of it, like, you couldn't deconstruct the found footage genre the same way you would deconstruct the sort of slasher killer genre like Scream did. This has got that sort of abstracted layer of, it's not just you found the footage, it's someone else found the footage and they're trying to get that authenticity. And you see that you actually, in trying to work it out, trying to understand the story, you get drawn into it. And the film then, I think, sort of cuts it off because you would naturally sort of think, when we're watching Gavin's story, we're already at the next level of abstraction. And so I thought it was actually really clever that the obvious next thing that happens is that the director of the film is brought into it. And it's not just the crew Gavin hired, it's literally the people making the film. And at this point, we are leaking meta everywhere, There
was so much meta.
That's what I was loving.
Way too much meta.
That's what the kids say.
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling the chills for a good part of the film because I was just like prodding my fiance and being like, "What was this? Did you see that? Do you think they're doing that with it?" And just looking at it through the sort of knowing that it is playing on the structure of a found footage movie.
Yeah, well, as we talked about, even that is not the first found footage movie to play with things in that way. Where I've seen Noroi. I never heard. It's a Japanese film. I don't know how to say it, but it's been a while since I've watched it. But I have good authority from my horror movie fan husband that is another found footage film where the meta is escaping, where there is a director of the film in the film, in the same way that Gavin is in this film. The director who first finds the footage or has first taken the footage becomes part of the phenomenon he's viewing.
Okay.
So even that is a deconstruction of in to the extent that Noroi is part of the genre. Even to incorporate that as a element is to introduce that as a trope almost that is playing on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also had that sort of re-examination that I've just flashed Lake Mungo up there as this played the genre a lot straighter, but it still had that sort of greater reward of attention. I don't want to say too much in terms of how it spoiled. In case of spoiling it, that one you really should see unspoiled. But again, it was another mature take that looks like a sort of a genre maturing and evolving.
Something that people say about found footage films a lot is that they're boring, which I think is probably missing the point where sorry, just since you mentioned Lake Mungo, I thought I'd bring it up that the mundane everyday tasks that you see in found footage films, they, just like we were talking about earlier with something like a Stephen King novel, they serve to ground the story. We see Gavin and his son and his wife, and they're like having money troubles, and it just helps. It's not part of the same phenomenon, but it's building the characters, of course, but it's also grounding us in this very real place where we feel like this is our life. It's something like our own life, where it just makes it feel real in a very scary way.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like Gavin felt very real. I didn't necessarily like him. Like there was that artificiality he had at the start that makes you question his authenticity, and then you sort of, I mean, I found that his progression works so well. He's got that authenticity, which sort of gets tested. It crumbles. We see he's kind of got a lot of aspirations, and he sort of drops that artifice, and then the sort of failure of that when he's getting tested, when things are falling apart, where it's affecting his family, no one's believing him, that sort of naturally, understandably drives his decision when no one believes the footage to then go and test himself and go to the tunnel.
Yeah, he's desperate.
Yeah, and you understood him. You understood him. You may not have liked him, but you understood him.
Yeah.
Eric,
Our director
I
is
feel like
making
I'm
a
in the
very
minority when I say I liked him.
Yeah, the Amazon reviews may be harsh. I rarely approve of Rotten Tomatoes takes after they've done my boy Friday the 13th Part 3 dirty, but
Ooh.
they're pretty good on Butterfly Kisses. That's got a 79% approval. Good lads, good lads there. I'm also quite distracted by these messages. I might just flash them up on screen.
Read them out.
Do it.
I've got to say the 3 phases of filmmaking. I can see what he means by that. Because obviously the film students are very much trying. Well, they're all trying to get the film done, just for completely different reasons, and that kind of affects what they talk about. So obviously the film kids, when they don't, the film students, when they're talking about, we didn't end up getting a peeping Tom near the beginning. They're just like, oh, let's fake it, which isn't something but they all kind of want to fake something, each one of them, but for different reasons and do it in different ways. So the Gavin says, oh, call the director. You're a documentary maker. You'll have connections. Kind of cheating in that way, and then
True.
Yeah, and then the Eric in it. They kind of just give up after he gets killed, but before that, they're kind of trying to. They set him up with the radio station as well, so that's another way of cheating. So everyone's trying to cheat to succeed, and that definitely comes across in the film quite well.
Did anybody feel bad for Gavin at that point when he was on the radio station and he was getting absolutely butchered?
Yeah.
By the callers in, and
Totally.
I have to say when is it Eduardo Sanchez? Eduardo Sanchez called through, and I actually sort of because obviously he directed the Blair Witch Project, and I'm thinking, oh, there's a guy who can get on side with him, and again he absolutely went into him as well because obviously he was trying to pass this off as a genuine found footage film, found footage, which of course we know it was. And he was saying, I never tried to palm off the Blair Witch as a genuine film, and it may have been my younger mind, but I thought to myself, you cheeky bugger, because didn't he make like a whole website detailing the lore of the Blair Witch just to try and rope people into making it believe it was real? And you're sitting there telling him, who's actually got the real deal, that he needs to. I was like, oh, might's gone, but yeah, it was like I was angry at Eduardo at that point. I was like, you cheeky man.
Yeah.
It's a bit savage, wasn't it? Yeah, I was totally with Gavin York on that. You feel for him. And oh gosh, what was that?
He was a very well written character. Yeah,
definitely. It kind of makes it. Part of seeing that is just that brilliant thing of you understand Sophia and Feldman's desperation. No one's taking them seriously. Let's fake it. I don't think you're really sure whether it's real or not. Like, you keep getting that doubt in, and I guess you just end up almost being forced into seeing Gavin's position. The sort of, fine, I'm going to have to go do it myself. And it's a clever conceit. It sets it up. Yeah. It challenges you constantly with that.
To bring in another level of sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Oh, that's right. I was just going to say. I was just going to say it felt very looped towards the end, because obviously you have the first layer being the black and white found footage, you have the second layer obviously being Gavin York's, and then you obviously have the third layer, which is of course Eric Myers, retaining all of the found footage to use it himself, and you just think it's going to be a rinse and repeat. Now he's going to get the criticisms. Obviously we don't see that because film ends, but you know he's going to get the criticisms and the doubts and the naysayers, and probably get over obsessed and end up staring at the tunnel for an hour and doing himself in. Then someone else finds the footage. It's almost like the Ring, almost like the Ring. That videotape just always finds its way to someone else.
Yeah, I was going to bring in an additional layer.
And I think that might be how Peep and Tom may have evolved.
Sorry, Po, go ahead.
I was going to bring in an additional layer of meta, which is that I went to look at those Amazon reviews, taking us back to when we were on Twitter discussing that we were going to do this stream. I had not rewatched the film yet. But when I found out that the director had tweeted you, I decided to look up the film on Amazon Prime, and that was when I read the bad reviews. And so it was with that mindset that I was going into the film, knowing that this film, was probably not as well regarded as it really deserves to be. And so the struggling filmmaker, which is Gavin, really, I was thinking like this is like almost too real. Like it's not the same thing, obviously, even though the director is literally a character in the film. I was reading the real life director more into the character of Gavin, where it seems like you've got this struggling artist who has something real, who has something good, and yet is not being recognized, and his life is falling apart. And I think the chat that we flashed up on the screen just a minute ago pretty much sums that up, where on top of this spooky boogan that's going to come and get you and kill you, there's this sort of existential dread that is much more real, of just the talent. Sometimes you can be talented and hardworking, and you could have a really good idea and you could have a really good film, and it's still not good enough. It's just tragic.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that vibe, I get feelings of like, you remember The Babadook and The Witch, films where it's like, okay, there's a scary book in there, but oh my god, the rest of your life is terrifying as well.
Exactly.
And in terms of the meta angle, while we have the director here, there are 2 points of reference I wanted to check on that I got. If I get both of them, I'll be very impressed. I realize one is a long shot. So the first one, in terms of like the author being dragged into the story to make sense of it, I got real House of Leaves vibes. I'm not sure if people have read that. Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves, a very sort of postmodern horror book. It had that a similar thing of just deliberate confusion over the author being dragged into the story, played very straight, and it also made me think of a reference from way back when. There's a Doctor Who episode or serial called The Mind Robber. It's a second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. And it's a similar one where they're basically trapped in a world made of fictional constructs, and the Doctor's big challenge is to avoid writing himself into the story. It's a tad hard to explain, but kind of an awesome concept for a 1960s show. I'm now worrying if it was
just don't pick up the pen, Doctor.
Speaking of Doctor Who, this really reminded me of the Weeping Angels.
Yeah, well. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that influenced it, but yeah. And then obviously, Peeping Tom tries to get you to blink when he's close enough with the butterfly kisses, which yeah, it had that thing in Family Guy where it's like, oh, he said the name of the film, but I didn't really. It wasn't like I was excited to say that. I'm just like, oh, that's where they said it. Yeah.
Just as a little reprieve from the horror, did any of you ever get butterfly kisses when you were a kid? It's like my mum used to do with me when I was little, is to actually do the butterfly kisses on my cheek. I don't know if that's a common experience for children.
I think
I did get butterfly kisses, but my mum used to give me fish kisses, Eskimo kisses even.
Oh
if
yeah,
you don't know what that is, where you suck your lips
the
in.
nose, isn't it? I think I got butterfly kisses when I was younger. I'll have to check.
Oh, and fish kisses actually. She used to suck a mouth in, so I was like literally just like the top and bottom lips are poking up in the middle, and then do that. Bless my mum. I love my mum. Real queen.
Nice.
So many real things.
I can't stand Doctor Who, fair enough.
Stephen Moffat BTFO'd. Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm liking this Eric Myers guy even more. Can't stand Doctor Who.
It's
nice.
all right.
No,
Eric, I might have to DM you. I think we need an interview for these, for more of the theories. I mean, we're talking about the title here. I mean, moment of genius when you realise Oh, that's why it's called that.
Mm.
And this wasn't even at the end of the film for me. It was, oh, it's a good film. Then I think I was just like getting ready to sleep. I was, oh, that's why it's called Butterfly Kisses. Oh my goodness. So shall we discuss this quite? There's something the film did that I absolutely loved. Because obviously, and we are full spoiler mode, as we've already said, we're talking about something that happens right at the end of the film. Butterfly Kisses is centered around this haunting spectre that approaches you, getting closer and closer every time you blink. And obviously, the butterfly kisses is the fluttering of the eyelashes upon someone by blinking very closely. And if you want to stop blinking, you can go sort of Clockwork Orange, which you're not going to be able to keep up, or you can use the very drastic solution that the star of the found footage Sophia Crane does. And
Yeah.
you know, there's a whole hey, that's the name of the film, but gosh, that was what I believe TV Tropes calls fridge genius. As in, you don't even
Eric,
realize it until you're over and sort of like getting a drink from the fridge when you're like, oh, and it just hits you. I loved it.
Proper horror show. Eric's
Yes.
asking if he can jump on. I think
Nice.
if you're happy,
Can I schedule it separately? Is that cool? Could I schedule an interview? Let's
that'd be
I
brilliant.
will we'll do it over Twitter if that's cool. We'll sort it out. But I'd love to talk more in depth because I think there is a lot in there that is worth dissecting, if you will.
Moving up in the world.
Are you going to ask you about Candyman as well?
Yeah, everyone gets asked about Candyman, probably. Candyman or... Actually, I'm not going to make that joke. Never get the interview if I do. But people can probably guess the other film I was going to reference. Sorry, so I'd got a note for this, that this does something, and I'm not just saying it because the director is here, but I'd got it in my notes that this does something that I love in horror films, that it has a kind of a build for an almost like operatic moment of massive excess. Like a lot of horror films, it's like quite slashy, you know, and the gore will kind of mount. But some films really sort of build their impact to one really strong moment. And I was thinking of some examples of this. I mean, I don't really want to spoil too many movies, but I'll keep it kind of oblique in case people haven't seen the film. But Gerald's Game and the way the protagonist escapes, Saw, and the sawing off of a foot, The Grudge and the let's say adjustments to someone's face, Hostel 2, the adjustment below the waist. These are quite oblique. I wonder if anyone's like scoring, like, oh yeah, that's what she's on about. Okay,
I get it.
there we go. Feed, the final shot, let's say, and those ones that stood out to me. So something that just... Sorry, that is my cat. They build up to a really strong, unexpected moment. It's kind of like you haven't seen it before, really. It's building up. So in Saw, it is building up to the dilemma is there from the very start. They are chained by their feet. They have hacksaws. What are you going to do about it? And it really builds up to it. And I wouldn't say this wasn't as obviously set up for the moment where Sophia cuts her eyelids off.
Mm.
But my
Yeah.
goodness, was it brilliant? It's that. I'm sorry for being pretentious, but it is that kind of operatic quality.
Well, it's at the end of a. It was interesting because at the very start of the film, it has the start of that scene where she says, "Put this at the beginning and the end of this film." Here's
That's
my
a good
final
film
message.
student thing to do as well, to tell them where to put it in the film as well. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, and then it does. It kind of reminded me of Soma, because there's bits in the video game Soma, for those that don't know. But because in that game, kind of your vision cuts out at some bits when there's a lot of horror going on. It reminded me of that as well. I can't imagine he's played it, but it's quite effective for it's kind of like turning the screen black and just hearing horror going on. It's got the same effect, but in a way is scarier. And then she just comes back and there's just blood from her eyes. Yeah, that bit got me quite badly.
For me, it was more of a mystery than a build-up, because the first time I was watching it, I'm thinking like, at the start she says she's got a solution, and you're watching it, and for me, I was just thinking like, okay, so what's the solution? Like she knows she's going to die if she blinks. Like I hadn't thought of cutting the eyelids off yet, so that just seems like, it is kind of like the Saw thing where you go like, I couldn't possibly do that. Like that would be too painful. Like, you can't force yourself to go through that much pain, and then to see someone actually do it because they're that scared of what will happen otherwise, I think is that was both shocking, but also it was just a neat little mystery to be solved at the end as well.
Well, there is a certain element of realism in that. When your survival instincts kick in, you're going to do things that you wouldn't normally expect yourself to do. I mean, I don't know if you guys have, it's a bit off topic, but I don't know if you guys have seen the film 127 Hours. If you haven't, I mean, it's based on a true story. Basically, guy goes into the into like the rocky areas. He falls, gets a big old rock stuck on him, and he ends up having to cut his own arm off to survive. And you wouldn't, and the method he has to use to do that. I mean, you absolutely sort of think, oh God, I could never do that. But when you're staring death in this case, you're literally staring death in the face. You're going to do anything, I suppose, to try and keep yourself alive. And in Sophia's case, if she's cracked it and she knows if I slip my eyelids off, I'll live. She has to weigh that up. Does she want to live? Yes, then that's what she's got to do, and she does it. And
a lot comes together in that scene as well, because she mentions the woman who just stared at the sun to go blind, basically.
Yes,
and she's like, "Oh, that didn't work. She can still blink." So you had that, and she also she smashed her award to get the glass to cut her eyelid off. And I was wondering why that was in the film before. I'm like, what's the point in this? And then later on, when just before Feldman dies, he has a go at her for the award thing, which from what I could understand wasn't necessarily her fault. And obviously he's annoyed. I'm like, what? It's a plot device at this point, but no, it's actually brought in at the end as well, and I thought that was pretty clever, personally.
Was it Chekhov's gun?
Yeah,
horror show.
Yeah, it's definitely a Chekhov's gun.
Heck yeah. I have a big weakness for this sort of strong setup and payoff, especially where it's thematically relevant, because like in this one, it's pretty predestined. Like because of their character traits, they are stuck on their path. Sophia and Feldman, they take the footage because they want to prove themselves, and they're so desperate, and they're bought into it. At that point, their fate is sealed. Then, Gavin, it's his own journey, and for the reasons we said, his fate is sealed. So that setup of the, in very film student language of how you should cut it in, that is thematically relevant. So it's a very nice touch. I mean, it's a fun joke when they do that sort of flash forward at the start of Fight Club. It's there for a joke, and we all enjoyed it. But this one, it matched the themes, just like if people have seen the Pet Sematary remake, which is actually on Netflix now. So highly recommended. I think I would say it's one of the remakes that beats the original. And it does the same thing. It opens with the ending and sort of as a flash forward, and then it's getting you thinking about predestination. I love it. I really like it.
Do you not think there's some irony in remaking Pet Sematary when the whole film is about not bringing things back from the dead?
Oh no, who could resist that? Who could resist that? But reminder, they did make in terms of similar failing to get the message. Remember, they did make a line of Child's Play dolls, so we never learn. I don't know. Have people seen both the remake and the original Pet Sematary?
I saw the original.
As I said before, I've only ever read the book.
I've obviously seen neither.
Okay. Potential.
As I say, it's this learning experience.
One of the top.
Haryan, have you seen there is a South Park episode that heavily references it? Have you seen that?
I have more than likely seen that, but I don't know which one it would be. Oh dear. All my pop culture knowledge comes from South Park, The Simpsons, and Family Guy.
It's not uncommon, unfortunately. I've had the same experience.
Oh dear.
What about Steps, Haryan? Do you remember Steps?
The band. I know.
Yes.
I know Tragedy. Yeah.
The band.
All right, good. We're just checking. I was upset for weeks after that Destiny's Child thing.
I forgot about that.
Unbelievable. I'm going to be asked about bands weekly as well as horror films at this point. Oh dear.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, don't worry. I mean, I have our topic, like the rough guide to topics, and sort of. I know other people have done it, but I would like to talk about like remakes that beat the original or that really added something interesting to it. And Pet Sematary is
The Fly.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Are we doing Teeth with Po as well?
Hopefully.
I'm not looking forward to that one.
I didn't want to presume. I
thought you mentioned
with someone.
I've heard.
I have a process. First you have to get people thinking that horror is a worthwhile genre, and Poe's already there. And then it's little steps like Saw 4 is not a disgraceful cash-in, and then you slowly work your way up to Teeth is at least a 2 out of 5 stars, maybe 3 on a good day. I realise that's a very hard sell.
Oh.
1 canine out of 4, basically.
I think there is an interesting phenomenon of the there's the kind of the film student, film snob versus the like film enjoyer of the person who can, watch anything and enjoy it on multiple different levels. I think that's the true film fan is someone who can enjoy Teeth.
So, are we talking in memetics? It's not so much like the Marvel film fan versus the Teeth enjoyer. Is it more like the horseshoe meme?
Yes, I think so.
I think it's the horseshoe meme. If people know that, I might have to tweet out a few of them. I will go quite far in my justification for why Saw 3 was genuinely really good. But it sounds like you aren't sold on. I don't like calling it torture porn, but you aren't sold on those movies, are you, Po? And you don't have to be. It's all good.
I'm not looking down my nose at them. It's just not. It's just not something that I really enjoy on that very mechanical level of like seeing people get hurt. Like I could appreciate it on an effects level, and if they build a story up well, and all of that, I can appreciate it. I'm just not like on the absolute basic level of do you enjoy seeing this? It's probably like I'm not a huge fan.
I think I don't mind torture porn personally. I think again, it's just like it's almost like a subsection of the horror genre. But I think a film like Butterfly Kisses, for example, is a
I wouldn't say that's
brilliant example of a film that doesn't need to go that out on the gore side of things to have the desired effect of scaring the viewer. Like, I walked away from this film, or got up from this film, genuinely like, okay, that was a bit scary. Especially that bit when, as I said, when he was doing like the shots, and then he was getting a bit closer, and that bit when he just sort of leaned his head and waved, mate, that freaked me out big time. But yeah, and then like Hostel, for example, you don't need to just completely rip apart people. He didn't need to do that. Just that jump scare and just the creepiness and just those little bits where you could see him getting that bit closer, and just and like you said, Harry, and just knowing that at the end, his eyelashes is just going to be flicking your eyes. He's right there. Just the image that creates in your mind, just far outweighs any sort of visual thing that a director or a producer could throw on the screen.
Also, did anyone it's kind of a comment I have on the film. I'm not really sure though. Do you reckon Gavin was trying to commit suicide when he started recording the tunnel? I think he was trying to martyrdom himself to say, see, I told you it was true.
I think so, yeah.
Possibly, or I don't know if I was intending to have this impression during the film as well, but there were points where even I started to doubt the authenticity of the tapes. Obviously we know they're real because at the end you see Sophia in the institution, but knowing everything leading up to that point, and the counter arguments to the legitimacy of the tapes, up until when they start going, oh, that is actually quite odd. I was thinking, is he being led up the garden path? Is he drawing his own conclusions? Has he got the confirmation bias? Because nobody's buying it, even when you can't even convince the the paranormal group that what you've got here could be the genuine article is like, are we the viewer also being maybe led up the garden path by Gavin in his belief that these are real? I almost thought that was going to be a twist, and obviously that wasn't the case. And again, I don't know if I was meant to feel like that, but there were moments when I was like, dude, I'm not even sure now myself.
I never actually got that feeling. It might just be me, but I was convinced that Peeping Tom was real and that they were going to die all the way through. I don't know. It never even crossed my mind that it could be fake, and I don't know why.
Because you're watching a horror film, wasn't it? I mean,
well, partly, but even so, but I know horror films are fake, and it's. Do you know what I mean? He's found footage. The Blair Witch Project. It was fake when they were recording it, so it could have been like that.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I was angling at, because they were students doing a project, and it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that they could be trying to recreate something like that for their own for their own purposes. Yeah,
because they were saying it, but I think what was convincing me was their reactions on camera, which now that I think about, when they first see Peeping Tom come up in the tunnel, they just seem so convinced. Like, I was convinced by their reaction, basically, but now that I think about it, they could have just been acting in those, but that never even crossed my mind in the film.
See, I was getting flashbacks to like the first Paranormal Activity when the guy's reviewing the footage the next morning. He's like, whoa, look, check this. Oh my god, that's so freaky. It was almost, I say a mirror of that scene would be the wrong way of putting it, but there were elements of that which felt like that. And of course, as we know, Paranormal Activity isn't actually a real film, and do you know what I mean? So it could have been that they were almost recreating scenes like that for their own project, quote unquote, giving off the impression that it's real. But obviously, we know that's not the case now.
It's quite a brave move to just, especially for the film to effectively say, oh yeah, this is easily faked. This could be faked. No, don't trust this. Look how, in fact, this is probably fake. It's really kind of ballsy for the film to do that. And I don't know, it almost feels like it sort of gets it out the way.
They literally have the line Peeping Tom. They just think Peeping Tom's a man in a hat, and he is actually a man in a hat, really.
It
but
gets
yeah.
it out the way. Once you've done that, you then it sort of addresses it, and then you're going on how you feel about the characters. I think you get brought in again. It's a brave move, you know.
Yeah, it reminded me of Scream a bit, but it probably did the meta for the found footage horror genre. It parodied that better, even though it was 100% serious than Scream. Yeah, it was a really good mix considering.
I think the first attack on Sidney Prescott, a clip I have used probably more times than I should have because I get copyright struck every single time. Thank you, Miramax. But as she answers the phone, she's asked, "What's your favorite scary movie?" She says, "Come on, Randy, you know I don't watch that stuff." It's always some dumb blonde who can't act, some dumb blonde with big tits who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be running out the front door. It's insulting.
Yeah.
And they've got that out of the way, like it's a lamp. It's been hung on a lampshade. It's been projected into the sky like the bat signal. That challenge is out there. How are you going to do it? How are you going to carry on the slasher film having put that out there? It's a similar challenge.
I love how the Peeping Tom standing up in the tunnel. It looks exactly like what it is, which is a man in a hat standing up in a tunnel.
Yeah.
And there's something. Yeah. There's something. Yeah. It's simple and it's kind of bold and beautiful. The fact that like they haven't done like a cheesy effect or like an ethereal glow around him or anything. It just looks like a guy standing up, and that is, it looks so real, but at the same time looking so easily fakeable that it works for the plot. It's like it looks like a film student could do that, and that if you were a film student, that is the effect that you would do, right? But it grounds it in reality in that way that found footage does so wonderfully.
Eric's just said, "What does Sydney do when she's attacked in a house? She runs up the stairs." Yeah, but the door's locked on her, to be fair.
It gets locked. It gets
funny
locked.
when you see that.
It winks at you,
Yeah. But I caught that when I watched Scream the other week as well, to be fair.
I don't think it was supposed to be subtle.
Yeah. That was another thing in this film that I didn't quite get the significance of. What when they're talking about when they freeze frame on the jump scare where you can see into Peeping Tom's eye, they're kind of like, oh, it's just it's kind of a freeze frame of him looking out the tunnel. What do they get from that? It's
I think it's just supposed to be a first person view. I think it's just supposed to be that.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of the significance, I struggled. I think it was just, oh look, when you look out and you see him, this is what he sees when he's called.
Yeah, I guess
because it was just.
I guess it was them saying, "Oh, this could be real," then, because it's not a reflection of like the camera lens or Feldman. It's a reflection of what he sees when he gets up, which apparently was one of the hardest things to get right, which I can well imagine. The simplest things are sometimes the hardest to get right.
That's it. Yeah.
Which he says in the message after.
Sorry.
No, but it was done.
But I think it was brilliantly executed. Really done well. Yeah.
And then.
I mean, there were nice touches in like the quite interesting, like the interesting thing with the sound text breaking the sound down, and it was kind of a nice idea. I think I read an interview where Eric, you said that idea of this little noise that's at the start of the recording can be broken down into Morse code and then broken down into a digital image. It's pretty cool, and that was suggested by one of the sound techs. It was an interesting idea, but like for me, it's a simple image, and it's like I think is being referenced here. It's it's not something you adjust to find. It's just there. He's just there. He's on camera, and once you've established that, it's everything that comes after that builds from it, and it's almost like if he's there, sort of, what do you expect him to look like? What do you expect to see? It's,
Actually,
again, it's quite
while
an
we've got-
interesting pivot.
Oh,
You
sorry.
know. No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
definitely. Actually, while we've got Eric here, just to sort of go back to what I asked earlier, what mentioned earlier, with Peeping Tom, what was the inspiration behind the design of the character? Because I mentioned earlier that I got Rorschach vibes from The Watchmen, so I'd be really interested to know what the inspiration, if you know, what your inspiration was behind the design.
Because
And the
me and
Slenderman comparison as well.
we thought Slenderman, so it's yeah, because the top hat's a bit that's something I've not really seen in a horror film where the enemy's wearing a top hat, really. The monster's wearing a top hat.
Jeepers Creepers.
Oh yeah,
I know what he did. Last summer.
There's also a Kinderstod in the Buffy season 2 episode. Is
watch Buffy.
The coolest thing about that Morse code image is that it was 100% legit. The image was determined and the sound was reverse generated. Wow.
I was wondering that. That's pretty incredible. Yeah, that's pretty good. I can't remember what the image made actually.
It made the silhouette, it made the outline.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Pretty nifty.
That's not bad.
The Babadook had a top hat too. Just gonna say that.
Oh yeah.
I've not seen many horror films.
You missed. What about Freddy? Freddy's always wearing a hat.
Of course, yeah.
He takes it off.
But it's not.
That's a fedora though.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of the same silhouette.
Tips Fedora / his teenager.
Oh, nice.
Massacre?
Yeah.
I'm so
if you look on Twitter, Eric's tweeted us with the tattoo on his arm.
I saw that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta
Maybe
see this.
smile.
Oh, hang on. We have an answer on Rorschach. Okay. We can go with that.
Let's have a look. I wanted both these Lucanese rules to be a mashup of various urban legends and moving monsters to create a familiar vibe. So, like that Bloody Mary thing, you'd seen it before.
Did you guys ever do the Bloody Mary urban legend when you were kids? I was too scared to.
No, I did.
Yeah.
No, I'm too much of a chicken.
I'm
wow.
not,
There you
I'm,
go.
not, I'm not a wuss. But yeah, I've done it before. She didn't appear. Very disappointed.
2 out of 10 would not.
You just wanted
not
to. To be fair, Haryan probably tried summoning her just so he could simp for her.
Just so I could simp, yeah.
Yeah.
I was very low on Queens that day.
She was Tradcath.
Yeah.
On
I found a
Haryan.
tunnel. Yeah, I found a tunnel and stare at it now. See if that's any more successful.
Po, did you have any more notes? Because I know you said you got notes on this. I just wondered if I've not missed anything out.
Yeah, I should have really dressed up my notes to look a bit more creepy, like I've been going crazy and drawing symbols all over it. But
Oh, nice.
yeah, apart from the
that would be wicked.
Lake Mungo, which you already mentioned. Yeah, his smile and optimism gone. That was my note on the Will Wheaton Gavin character. Is that was my impression of watching this the second time? Is that remembering what happens to him at the end when I saw him at the start, and he's so enthusiastic and he's like, "Yo, this film is real!" Like he's so excited about the idea that Peeping Tom should be real. And by the time we get to the end, it's his complete undoing. Like financially, and then also like literally his life ends, and it's like to see him slowly degenerate in that way is kind of satisfying. But yeah, it just reminded me of the his smile and optimism gone meme, which is always something I appreciate.
Poor guy. That was another.
I genuinely felt bad for him. I
what's that
genuinely
to you,
felt bad for him. No, I was just saying I genuinely felt bad for him. I was in the camp of Gavin gang.
I was gonna say, you know the jump scare bit, I guess I'll call it, where he tries to hammer Peeping Tom. There was a security cam in the corner. Did you actually get post-death footage from that in the film? I don't remember.
I don't think we saw it.
I don't.
No,
I
think the momentum was really building at that point in the film because it it just escalates and it picks up speed. Like
Yeah.
it's almost no time between that and then you're seeing Gavin dead, and then you're seeing what happens
Yeah.
to Sophia, and then your film's done. It's like it really speeds up, and
Yeah, because
so I'm not sure we saw it.
No, because I imagine it was in the 3-hour cut. And I don't know how I feel about losing that, but having it at the same time, because you know he's dead. Do you really need to see it? I'm kind of on that level. At the same time, it would
Again,
be, what is he actually capable of? Well, you kind of get that with Gavin.
Yeah.
Although I don't know why he's naked when he's dead, but unless he was killed.
Again, sort of going back to what I said earlier about the gore side of it. Going back to what I was saying about the gore side of it, I don't think that this film necessarily needs that, because the image that you can get from just the description and sort of like the narrative sort of description as to what happens, I think can build its picture on its own. So while it would be interesting to see what it would look like, I think just actually building that image in your own mind would be enough.
Yeah, the imagination fills in a lot. Yeah.
But why was Gavin naked? Yeah.
Because even with Gavin, you get about 3 pictures of the death. And one of them's a really close up of his face where he seems to have gone blind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like any other film that I'd feel like a cheap jump scare, but I appreciated it in this one. So, as I say, very good film. Good work, Eric.
Yeah, I like that you said this is the scariest one you've seen so far.
Yeah, definitely. Compared to what Scream, Body Snatchers,
Alive was the other one.
Alive was the other one. Yeah. The more I think about Alive, the more it actually annoys me. I
think this one sort of sticks with you, and I know it's maybe because I was coming on stream, I was thinking about it like from little things like, oh gosh, that's why it's called Butterfly Kisses, to sort of working out the symbolism. And I guess maybe because the pattern of the story is that people get drawn in. Sophia starts this, follows the legend, gets drawn in. Gavin finds the footage, gets drawn in, and effectively the sort of Eric as a proxy director and meta director is brought in as well. You're almost like, okay, so what's the next step? Is it us?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's very open-ended, which I enjoy.
Well, I'm just going to say it now, but we've been on stream for 1 hour 57 minutes, and we've had this icon up for quite a while. Just saying.
I could get the thing from Brave Encounters 2 up again if you fancy a break.
Oh, jeez.
Special thing. We never mentioned that one. Brave Encounters 2 is a sequel way better than the original that has no right to be.
Oh, last week. Yeah.
I forgot to mention it. I think there was another one I forgot to drop, but never mind. I don't think I ever mentioned Final Destination 5. That one's impressive. It's coming a sort of whole 3 sequels apart. But never mind. Folks, I think we've hopefully made the case that yes, we are in a golden age of horror. And oh my god, Rent, Butterfly Kisses, it is fantastic. If people are skeptical of found footage, for good reason, I'd say. I don't want to write off a whole genre, but I think it's particularly prone to like the incredibly low bar for entry. It's a blessing and a curse. Like basically anyone can get in and make a found footage film.
Yeah, and as I said before, with kind of horror video games, Outlast came out full of jump scares. You then had about 5 years of just games coming out full of jump scares. Blair Witch Project was a bit like that, where that came out was actually pretty good, full of jump scare. Some jump scares, and then every other found footage film was just, oh, how do we make it scary? Oh, jump scare, without really thinking about what made it actually good.
Yeah. So. And with found footage, you also got into a pattern of you kind of the ending before you've even started. It's because well, how did this footage get abandoned so it could be found? Which we don't get here, but
no. But again, it's implied it's peeping Tom, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean this is an argument to not write off the genre. Like this is one that I would show people to say, no, actually, if I was trying to redeem found footage for people, I could show them Butterfly Kisses. I could show them Lake Mungo.
Right.
Give Grave Encounters 2 a shot. Maybe the Blair Witch remake, sequel, if they've not seen the original. I'd give it a go.
The Borderlands is a good fan footage that not many people know of. It's kind of like Peep Show, the way that it's shot. The two main characters are wearing a little head camera, and it's set in England, so it has kind of Peep Show-esque kind of vibe to it, but it's a horror film. It's good.
Okay.
If you want to get back on to talk about that, I'd love to.
Well, I don't know, Po. We've got to cover teeth first, It divides opinion. It's quite molarizing, if you will.
Oh,
no.
I just finished the stream now.
Yeah, fair play. Can't top quality puns like that. I hope you've made the cases for the topic and the film. People also, if you see Butterfly Kisses, go and give it a good review. I'd say give it an honest review.
Absolutely.
If you give it an honest review, it's going to be a good review. Support original horror and creative horror. And at this point, I think we'll wrap it up. And just like to thank everyone who's come on the stream. Folks, if you'd like to just say a little thing. Teabag, if you'd like to start.
So again, thank you very much for the stream. As I've been really looking forward to this one. So really good. So if you don't already know, I run a true crime YouTube channel, the Teabag Who Laughs. I recently released an episode covering the details of the Sarah Everard disappearance and murder, but I haven't included like the political discussions going on, because I feel like that detracts from actually what has happened. But if you do want to get a political angle, then check out Haryan's channel. I actually left a link in the description to his video, Dean and Taylor, and some of the arguments that are coming out, and his counterpoints to those. Really good video. Go check it out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Proper Horror Show as well. Like the stream, share it. It was really, really good, and she does a lot of great work. And unfortunately, because the CPU is not working, well, I say fortunately, I suppose, because we're having these fantastic discussions. So once again, thank you very much, and I'll leave it there.
All right.
Oh, thanks, Teabag. Haryan?
Yep. So as I say, most of you will know me by now. Current events and political topics on my channel, if you're so inclined. Laughing at the Guardian returns on Saturday. Who have we got? Got Tailed Featured and Gently Benevolent. Don't know who the third guest is going to be yet. Hopefully Discordia makes a return as well. I'm also going to try and finish the last part of Soma, which I've talked about a couple of times on this channel this week. Going to stream the ending of that and then hopefully make a video talking about it, because it's probably one of the best horror games ever made. More than just because of the jump scares, but also it really gets you thinking about what actually is life. So yeah, hopefully that'll be Friday if I get the time. But yes, thank you again for having me on, and go watch Butterfly Kisses. It's great.
And Po, thanks so much for coming on. It's been really nice getting you on the channel.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for picking a film that I really enjoyed rewatching in preparation for this. So hope we can do this again sometime with another horror film that I love. Maybe It Follows. Regardless of any streams upcoming, I suggest that everyone who hasn't watched It Follows goes to see that. The Vivitch and Butterfly Kisses, of course. All good films. It's great to be it's great to watch good films, and even if you're a sprog like Haryan,
2 years younger.
you haven't seen any good films. Okay, let's just get that out there.
I don't know.
Destiny Child is. Yeah. Yeah, you can go look at me. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere to Po the Person, the YouTube channel. But to be honest, it's not really anything to do with anything we're talking about here. So whatever, or don't.
Can I just say your ability to get decent audio quality from your car is admirable. I'm genuinely impressed.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good acoustics
So, yeah,
in a car.
subscribe
I
to Po.
explained it in a live stream, but the soft furnishings and curved surfaces actually very good for insulating sound.
Nice. I
It's
feel
really
one of
good,
the things
yeah.
that's nice about the stream is like I get y'all out of generally spheres that you basically get you out of the spheres you usually broadcast in. And I think it's kind of nice hearing you talk about horror films, about something very unusual. I quite like that. Right, folks, so you can all do your horror homework, because I continue to be surprised by how popular that is. I probably should have given a bit more advance warning for this one. It is doable. Next week, if all goes to plan, we are covering The Haunting of Bly Manor. It is a Mike Flanagan TV season. From my memory, it is 9 episodes. I did a review of the entire series, so if you cannot get access to watching it on Netflix, then I guess try watching my playlist of the review for that, and you'll get an idea of what we're talking about. We're going to be focusing on that series and sort of the idea of long-form horror in general. But you should have time to watch it between now and next week, and then it'll be a movie the week after. So for you, for everyone who wants to do their horror homework, it's going to be The Haunting of Bly Manor. And with that, Haryan, have you started?
No, and I've just realised that's 9 hours of my next week that I'm going to be putting into it, which is fine. I'll watch it on my lunch breaks.
Nice. Nice.
Right.
All right. Cool. Actually, you know what? If you can't manage it, just watch the 1962. I want to say 1962 film The Innocents, from which it is partly adapted, and you will be able to input plenty. But that is all from me for tonight. So I'll once again thank all our guests, all the guests on the stream, and pray for my CPU, guys. It's still in Czechia. One day it will return. All right. Night, y'all.